My name is Ron Dotzler, and I'm from Omaha, Nebraska. Can any good come from Nebraska, right? I am married to an African-American woman from the Washington, D.C. area. We've been married 35 years. We have 14 children, so you can only imagine our favorite scripture verse, be fruitful and multiply. For the past 27 years, we've lived in the inner city of Omaha. Omaha's a population of about 1 million people, and the inner city is about 100,000 people that are affected by the challenges and the issues related to the inner city. And so the question that I really want to kind of have conversation around is, how do you make diversity a reality in your church? Now, one of the powerful things in these 27 years of living in the inner city is having so many people impact my lives. My wife specifically has impacted my life. Relationships have definitely challenged me and have taken me into an arena that I never previously was exposed to. In fact, when I called up my wife's parents and asked to marry their daughter, they said no. And I said, why? And they said, because you are white. That's the first time I'd ever been called white. It seemed so limiting. It seemed so devaluing. It just seemed so unfair that just because I was white, I couldn't marry their daughter. It just seemed so wrong, you know? Well, a few months later, I actually met my wife's parents in the D.C. area, and they began to explain to me what it meant to be black in white America. Now, I had never been called white before, and now all of a sudden I was hearing these phrases, black and white, and that was all new to me. But they explained, Ron, they began to ask me, Ron, had you ever sat at the back of the bus because of the color of your skin? Not been able to eat at certain restaurants because of the color of your skin? Or been denied a job because of the color of your skin? So needless to say, every one of us in leadership, if we're going to have a vision for diversity, we have to, first of all, have a value for diversity. And that value comes out of the heart of who we are. It's kind of like, vision is birthed out of something that we're discontent about. A holy discontent has been described as something in our heart that we're unsettled about, that's not right in society, that we get a vision for. And if you were to ask me, is race a problem in America? Is diversity, I could never experience the power of diversity until I first realized there was a problem with diversity. And so before I could ever envision a multi-ethnic church, which today I have planted a couple beautiful multi-ethnic churches as part of a leadership team that has grown to almost 1,000 people, very diverse. And the power of that diversity is reflected out of the problem or the holy discontent. So before you ever have a vision for it and start to actually create the reality of diversity in your church, you'll have to have a value for it, and a pretty high value. And so there has to be something in your relationship that unsettles you about the state of race relationship, about the absence of diversity. There's a lot of wonderful books out there that will describe how diversity is not a reality. So if you and I are going to make diversity a reality, we have to, first of all, value it. Now, how am I going to value diversity if I've never been around it? In my case, I married into it. That was a start. But to be honest, for 8 years out of college, worked as a chemical engineer and didn't see much value in it. It wasn't until I actually moved into the inner city that I started realizing the incredible challenges and problems related to minorities in a majority culture. And so when you see Scripture, the multi-ethnic value is there very clearly, but I had no experience, I had no value of it based on my own experiences. And so I think one of the first things that's going to have to become a reality if you're going to lead and have this become part of your church, diversity is part of your church, you're going to have to live it. You're going to have these experiences and these relationships that gets deeply embedded in your heart so that you realize that the gospel is not the gospel unless it's a diverse expression of the gospel. John 17:21, Jesus prayed that they would be one. Unity is a clear value in Scripture, that they would be one so that the world would know. So our presentation of the gospel needs to be both lived and led. If we're going to proclaim the gospel, we're going to proclaim it with diversity, being at the intersection of the gospel. In John 17:21, the intersection of unity and the intersection of proclaiming the gospel, there's this beautiful intersection and connection. And so to get that experience where you actually have relationships that unsettle you, that diversity is not happening at the level that it can happen, that's the beginning point of being able to fulfill a vision. It has to become a value. And so in that value, what relationships do you have that are culturally diverse, that are ethnically diverse, that are challenging you at the core of who you are? Because at that challenge, you'll start to get unsettled to the degree that it'll turn into a holy discontent where you actually want to see this vision carried out. So that really is step one. And oftentimes when I talk with leaders and pastors who want to plant a church that's multi-ethnic, it's a wonderful dream. But that dream will never become a reality until it's first and foremost a value at the heart and soul of who you are. So then once you really begin to have these kind of relationships and you really become unsettled at the heart of who you are, you can actually move forward. But again, I just want to repeat, it has to be unsettling in your heart. I remember when I first moved into the inner city. In 1 week, I had 2 African American women say to me point blank, they didn't know each other, they were 2 different churches. They came up to me and they said to me, you know, Ron, white people can't be Christian. I was shocked by that. As I began to discover through conversation with them what they really meant, as one lady passionately communicated, all of her life as an African American woman, she's been poor. And she would go to church and they would talk about how a Christian reaches out and ministers to the poor. And her mother would read the Bible to her every night before she went to bed and describing how Christians reach and impact the poor. She said, Ron, until I'd met you, I'd never met a white person that had come and helped me in my time of need. So Ron, you just need to know that a population of us don't necessarily believe that white people can be Christian. Something happened inside of me through that conversation and many others where I began to realize that Christianity was much more than a belief. It was a lifestyle. When 2 Corinthians 3 says that you are living epistles read and known of all men. If diversity is going to become a reality in our church, we've got to value it, we've got to live it, we've got to have those kind of relationships where we're being challenged at the core of who we are. Because if the gospel is going to be the kind of gospel that touches nations, that changes the world, it's going to be a gospel of inclusion where diversity is powerfully represented. So the value of diversity at the core of who you are, to the degree that you actually are unsettled by the state or the lack of multi-ethnic diversity in churches, would be a great breeding ground for you as a leader to be able to lead it, because now you are living it. It's a value, so the vision can actually begin to take root. And so as you vision, some of the things that I would highly encourage as you begin to think about a multi-ethnic church is to not only live it out in relationships, but then lead in your communication. Express the value of diversity, the beauty of diversity. There's some great books out there, Connecting with Mosaic, connecting with some of the beautiful books out there that describe how you can lead in your conversation. But let me just say this again. In your conversation, as you're leading your congregation and your team into a multi-ethnic, diverse church, those conversations need to be filtered through the heart of you that has a holy discontent, through your own struggles, through your own challenges. See, as you become vulnerable of sharing about how diversity is so essential to the proclamation of the gospel, it's going to come out and people are going to resonate with it. And that is so key to building a team that expresses diversity. In that, beginning to then position people of minority status, of diversity in your leadership team, represented. They may not be on your staff initially, but that should be a goal. But if they are not, as you gather them and rally them around your own leadership and position them to share their story to your leadership team and to share their heart and to have this beautiful listening, learning experience together as a team is a powerful beginning to building a diverse team. And then obviously, eventually, some of those individuals need to be part of your leadership team, because you will draw the people around you based on the leadership that's even being presented. Secondly, just know this, that if you can go after a cause, little c cause in your city that attracts diversity, people from all different backgrounds will love gathering together with you to make a difference in that area. Whether it's homelessness, maybe it's violence, maybe it's education. Those little c causes are a great opportunity for diverse people to rally around in making a difference in your city in those areas. As a result of that, you'll start having conversations. And those conversations will build the kind of relational equity that is so essential to your church becoming diverse. So, a value of yourself, building a holy discontent. Number 2, going after a cause where you begin to really address an issue in your city that attracts diversity. The idea of leadership is also a part of number 1. But then number 3, and finally, building a culture that attracts diversity. We say it this way with our music. We want to provide the kind of music that people both feel and people understand. And so it's a diverse style of music genre that attracts people who both feel and want to feel that the gospel is true, as well as who want to understand and know that the gospel is true. And a diverse congregation, those two, is a powerful, powerful equation. So I want to encourage you, if you're going to build a beautiful multi-ethnic church, you got to believe that that is truly at the heart of the gospel. That to proclaim it, we've got to first and foremost live it. We've got to leverage it by putting people of minority and diverse status in front of us and listening to them. We've got to begin to think in terms of our city and go after a cause that will rally diversity. And then we've got to build a culture in our church that values diversity. God bless you.